Welcome to another edition of Nevada on the Air. I'm your host, Mitch Fox, President and CEO of the Nevada Broadcasters Association, and I'm extremely pleased to have Congresswoman Susie Lee on the program today. Welcome to the podcast.
Always great to see you, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I want to give her a proper introduction. She's Vice Chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, and boy, do we need more of those kinds of representatives. She's been ranked the number one most bipartisan member of Congress among all U.S. representatives, senators, and governors. Did I get that right?
Yes.
That's very impressive. She sits on two very important committees, Appropriations and Natural Resources. She's made veterans issues as well as education, health care, and gun violence among her top priorities in Congress. So great to have you on the program again.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You joined Secretary Buttigieg for this announcement that all the long-timers, and I include me on that list, have been waiting for an announcement of a high-speed train between Southern Nevada and Southern California. Tell us about it.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. First of all, it's a $3 billion investment from the bipartisan infrastructure bill that I helped negotiate and pass, so that's exciting. But most importantly, this is the first of its kind high-speed rail in the United States. It will reduce the travel time between Las Vegas and Los Angeles from what can be 8 hours at sometimes. Traditionally a 4-hour drive, it will be reduced to 2 hours. More importantly, it will create thousands of jobs. We look to 35,000 jobs being created by the Brightline high-speed rail, and not to mention the economic development that will happen around the station. And obviously, I think there's many more economic benefits that we have yet to predict. And so this is an exciting time for not just Southern Nevada and LA, but for our country as a whole.
I'm glad you brought up the economic development, because we hear about infrastructure projects being announced, and automatically people in Southern Nevada think, well, that's great for tourism, and I'll try it out, and instead of taking a flight down. But the jobs, I was surprised when you said that many jobs will be created as a result of this.
Absolutely. You got to build it and you got to run it. And not to mention what you're going to see. I mean, clearly when you have this type of connections between two major cities in the Southwest, the economic opportunity from that. Not to mention, it will take, I believe the number is 3 million cars off the road per year. And also that has an economic benefit because obviously we share I-15 with tractor trailers. That type of congestion, when you're waiting 8 hours to make the trip from Las Vegas to LA or vice versa, you reduce the number of cars. It's going to make the trip faster. That's going to have an economic benefit for those long-haul trailers that are trying to move product across this country as well. So it's just, to me, it's a win-win. It's something that community leaders have been working on for decades. And the good thing is it goes, the right-of-way is down the median of the I-15. So the projection is that it's going to be ready for the 28 Olympics in Los Angeles. So I think we're going to see the benefit of that because people will most likely utilize our incredible hotels and our entertainment while they're trying to see the Olympics in LA as well.
Very exciting. I want to ask you about the Problem Solvers Caucus as it related to this foreign aid package. There was so much debate going on, and this goes to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. And then it appeared as though the Speaker of the House had some problems with his own caucus in terms of getting this out. You worked on that. How did it all come together?
Well, listen, ultimately, as we have seen, it's really almost shocking that there were some members of the Republican caucus who did not want to see any more Ukraine funding. And including Johnson had sort of dragged his feet a little bit on that as well. So, we continued to work with people in the middle, and they knew eventually that they were going to need Democratic votes to get that bill across the finish line. And so, obviously, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, was able to negotiate with Mike Johnson that, yes, we would have enough votes. There would be people like me that would vote for that bill to get it across the finish line. And, listen, to me, we ended up passing, literally, the Senate had passed a version of the bill I think 6 weeks ago, a while ago, and Johnson refused to bring it to the floor for a vote. He had to appease some of his extreme members, so he broke it up into 3 different votes. They're essentially the same thing as what originally had passed the Senate. It would have been just better for Ukraine, better for everyone if we would have passed the original bill. But we ended up getting the job done. I think now everyone's sort of waiting to see if there might be a potential motion to vacate the speaker, and then we'll see what we do about that.
Yeah, cross that bridge, I guess. I want to stick on the issue of bipartisanship. As Governor Lombardo recently endorsed a bill, you're working on the accelerating appraisals and conservation efforts. Wow, that's a mouthful right there.
That's right. We call it the ACE Act, AACE. So.
What does it entail?
Basically, we live in a state where over 80% of our land is federally controlled. We know that the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, consists of hardworking public servants. They just happen to be understaffed. When we're looking at housing costs in our community and any type of projects that we have to do, that any economic development in Southern Nevada generally entails some form of disposal of public lands. Traditionally, only appraisers that are qualified in one state, in the state where the land is, can actually do the appraisals. And so that's just creating one little more bottleneck for getting land ready for disposal. So my bill just says if you're an appraiser in Utah or Arizona or California, you can appraise any federal public land across the country. So it's just sort of, eliminating a layer of red tape. Yes, and I was happy that Governor Lombardo endorsed it. It is a bipartisan bill. Across the Southwest, land conservation and land use is a bipartisan issue. He had pressed on the Biden administration to do more to alleviate or to get more land available for housing. And I asked him to endorse my bill because this is just one way of speeding up that process. And so he recognized the value of it and gave my bill the endorsement. And hopefully with that, we can continue to build bipartisan support and get it passed.
Let's talk about inflation. That seems to be a top-of-mind issue for voters. There are several of them. That seems to be rising to the top. Look at the price of gas. And I realize some people say, well, it's the Federal Reserve, or it's overspending, or it's a COVID money left. I mean, there's lots of finger-pointing going on. But is there anything Congress can actually do to help the consumer, help the people in your district to get a lid on this inflation, on skyrocketing prices?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people continue. We have seen inflation come down from a year ago when it was skyrocketing, and a lot of that, as we know, was sort of fed by the pandemic. We are still seeing some impacts of that as well. But, people are still feeling the pinch at the grocery store and at the gas pump. And yes, there are things that Congress can do. We just passed a tax package that expands or extends the child tax credit. That's putting tax money into people's pockets for their children to help them afford child care or expenses. With obviously raising a child is expensive. The low-income tax credit as well. That will incentivize developers to invest in low-income housing, which we obviously need here in Southern Nevada. So there are things we can do to make those types of investments that can help bring down the costs of living for Americans. And, we continue to have pressure on our child care, on housing, and so those types of targeted investments are really important.
And people forget that Congress acted in concert with the Biden administration on prescription drug, keeping a lid on prescription drugs, the cost of insulin. That impacts people.
Listen, the Inflation Reduction Act, on top of being the most significant investment in climate change in history, the provisions of that package that really took on prescription drugs and big pharma were so important. Next year, Medicare will be able to negotiate with drug companies on 25 of the most commonly used drugs. Now, again, this only affects Medicare recipients, but like you said, with the $35 a month cap on insulin drugs, that again was only supposed to apply to Medicare. But what we have witnessed is that insulin manufacturers have now extended that price cap across the board to non-Medicare recipients. So that's really the intent of it, because it's really hard to charge one price to one group of people and another price to another group of people. We know that Medicare is the largest purchaser of prescription drugs, or conduit to purchase prescription drugs. So when you allow and you have that buying power, it's going to bring down the cost of those drugs. We're going to eventually see that trickle out to the rest of Americans who are not Medicare recipients. Not to mention $2,000 a year cap on out-of-pocket expenses for seniors. So those are really important provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act.
The other issue that's on top of mind of voters is immigration. And I know Senator Langford had a bipartisan bill passed out of the Senate. It went over to the House, and as I understand it, Trump actually lobbied members of the Republican conference against it. Is that how it came out?
You know what? This is a sad tale that keeps retelling itself in Congress. And, Congress is the only government entity that can deal with immigration. It has been used as a political football for several decades. And the feeling, which I don't agree with, is that it's a good topic for Republicans to continue to, we do have a crisis at the border. We have to provide for border security, make sure there's consequences for people who come here illegally. But we also have to have a system that's set up that provides a process for you to come make your case that you need to be here, that you can be here, but also that we make a decision that is fast and fair and final. And then that we have work requirements for people who decide to come here. We are a country built on immigrants. We're an economy built on immigrant labor. And we need that labor for our economy. We know that all too well in Southern Nevada. And so I think it was really a sad statement that basically for political gain, you had a bill that was negotiated for months and months and months in the Senate. Really tough issues. They came and had a bill. It passed it. We literally could have passed it out of the House, had some border security measures like immediately, and now it's just sort of languishing because, the former president thought it'd be better political theater for him to not solve the problem that bill would have done.
And to keep in mind, Senator Langford is one of the most
He's
conservative
like
Republicans
yes.
in the Senate, right?
Yes, he negotiated that with Senator Chris Murphy. They really went through extensive lengths to really get to a compromise that both sides could agree on. It's rare that you have such a bipartisan vote in the Senate. But we'll keep working on it. I am the co-sponsor of a bill called the Dignity Act, which is a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform. We should not rest until we, one, provide people a legal pathway. The Dignity Act provides for a dignity pathway so that people can earn their citizenship, also an agriculture pathway as well, seasonal workers, and so making sure we're taking care of dreamers, There's so many things that have just languished for too long. So many people are living in uncertainty. But more importantly, our economy is suffering by us not solving this problem. We have got to provide people with a fair and fast and final pathway to prove that they, should be here, that legally we should accept them, and then make sure they're working once they get here and have the ability to work immediately. And so we got a lot of work to do, and we'll continue to work on this issue until we solve it.
One last issue, and that is this election. Now, everybody says this is the most important election in our lifetime. I remember when you first ran, I believe, in 2018.
Every election I say that.
Well, looking back from 2018 to now, is the electorate more polarized than it was now? Do you sense that the tenor of the campaign season has even become more intense and angrier? What's your feeling going into this race?
Yeah, I mean, so I got sworn in 2018. I was sworn in during a government shutdown, if you recall. And then, of course, we had January 6th, which was the potential attempt to disrupt a fair election. And so that, to me, has really sort of driven division into this country. And I always say that the only way we're going to get out of this is by talking to your neighbors. And obviously the role of social media, the role of misinformation, which we know is rampant on social platforms, has really, the algorithms that are used tend to take you further and further to the right or further and further to the left. It continues to divide us. And obviously, with the presidential election on the ballot this year, with Biden and Trump, you're going to have those same type of loyalties out there. And but again, I still think, and I believe with my heart, that it's important for us to reach across the aisle, to have those important conversations, and to really find areas where we agree, because I think the majority of Americans agree about on about 80% of the issues, and so let's find those areas of agreement and start to work towards them instead of highlighting where we disagree, because you're never going to get anywhere that way.
We'll have to leave it there. Congresswoman Susie Lee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. All right.
And I'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.